been thinking about my options, every detail in my head, but it doesn't really matter, nothing matters, so I cry instead. I've been running in circles, trying to catch my breath. I've been trying everything I can, but I ain't got nothing left.
So, welcome back to the channel. As you can probably see, I'm in this wood that's near where I live. The government are about to lock us down, so they're saying stay local. So I thought, well, I'll stay local and I'll come down and do a bit of woodland photography because I'm not very good at it, and the colours at the moment are magnificent. So I was talking to my mate Lee, and we've been watching a lot of videos on YouTube, and I think a lot of the stuff that's coming out at the moment with woodland photography is a little bit substandard. I think there's a lot of stocking fillers that people are putting out to try and just get a YouTube video out. So I'm hoping that this one's not going to be like that, because I'm going to try and do a different take on the compositions that I'm going to look for. I'm not necessarily just going to look for a tree that is in golden leaf. I'm going to try and find something that's a little bit different, hopefully. But we'll wait and see. You can never tell with these things. I've got my dog with me, Milo. He's rambling around somewhere. I'm not sure where, but he's having a good time. So I'll flick you back on when I find the first composition. So I've walked a little bit further into the wood now, and in this video I'm going to try and do compositions that aren't necessarily what everybody else goes out into the woodland and does, because you see a lot of videos where people are taking pictures of one tree with the golden leaves, and it's like just repetitive. So in this one I'm going to try and do something different. Now it might not work, so I'll put a caveat on it now that it might. Oh, while I think on, I've just launched a website as well. There's been quite a few people emailing asking for prints, so I've bit the bullet, and I'm not quite sure if I qualify as rank amateur photographer now that I'm trying to actually sell some of my work. But the website is www.andrewjsmithphotography.co.uk. so there's a lot of photographs on there on the website that basically I've taken while I've been doing these YouTube videos. So if you saw one that you liked, then chances are it might be in the website. So have a look, let me know what you think. Anyway, come a bit further down. Found this composition here, and just as I found it, the sun has come through the clouds and it's just blown the whole thing out. You can probably see the sun a bit on my face, so I'm gonna have to wait till it goes behind a cloud, but I'll flick you around and you can have a little look. And so effectively I found this fallen tree, but behind it you've got some beautiful autumnal orange colours. So I'll just try and show you what I'm trying to do with the camera. I'm trying to use that as the foreground, and I'm trying to use these trees here in the background as a bit of contrasting colour. Now I don't know if it's going to work this. I've tried to compose it. There's a few things I don't like about it. Not a massive fan of this branch here. I think that's a little bit distracting. And down here as well, I don't know if you can see it, this big bit that's holding up the log, that's a bit distracting as well. So I'm trying a few different things with this. I've got the camera at the moment, you'll see here, I've got it set up on a f9 and ISO 100. I've locked the ISO in at 100, so I'm in aperture priority, and it's going to basically, the camera will determine the shutter speed to get the correct exposure. The problem that I've got with this is going to be the dynamic range with the light. You can see the sun is coming through, and I'm shooting this with my Takina 11 to 16mm. Doesn't like shooting into the sun. You get lens flare on it. It's horrendous, so I'm having to use my hand to try and block the lens flare out. So if it's any good, you're going to see it now. If it's not, we'll move on and see if we can find something else. So I thought I'd take this opportunity to have a bit of a rant. Now I don't normally do this, but last week I was talking to my mate Lee, and Lee is a good photographer. He takes some cracking photographs of his little lad. They're really good, and we both follow a lot of the pros on YouTube, and we both came to the conclusion last week, and it was really annoying because almost every video that came out last week was saying that about Luminar 4. Now, you might have seen Luminar 4, and it's an artificial intelligence suite that's come out to compete with Lightroom and Photoshop. And every single photographer on their YouTube last week, I'm not joking you, every single one that I follow had a little cry about Luminar 4. And it does sky replacements, right, which the jury's out for everybody on whether you think that's photography or digital art. There's a massive argument as to what constitutes a photograph. But it's like, get over it, man. What does it matter? What does it matter? At the end of the day, right, if you declare it, that you declare your sky is not the sky that was there when you took the photograph and all the rest of it, what does it matter? What does it matter? Now, when Lee's doing his portrait photographs, he was doing a lot of editing in Photoshop. And if you're familiar with Photoshop, and I'm going on, and I'll shut up in a minute. But if you're familiar with Photoshop, then basically you have to mask to get the effects that you want. So if you want to make people's eyes a little bit whiter, skin tone a little bit different, you mask them. Now this takes forever and a day in Photoshop. It does. It takes forever. And what Luminar 4 does is it allows you to speed the process up. Not replacing skies, you're just using it as a masking tool, right? And I don't see any problem with that at all. I don't. I'm going to put a photograph up now that I took last weekend in Lytham. So have a look at this and then I'm going to talk about it. So that photograph there basically is two photographs. The boat Celestial Dawn's well known in Lytham. It was sunk. It was grounded and it didn't float. It floats now. The lads that own it have floated it. I took that photograph on a long exposure, but because the boat is floating, it's moving. And in long exposure, you want what you're taking the picture of to be static. You don't want it to move. So I took one photograph on a really fast shutter speed, and then I took one photograph on a long exposure for a minute. And in Photoshop, I put a transparency mask on and I coloured the boat in. I made the photograph that was the short shutter speed, that was sharp, I put that in, coloured it in so that is there, and you've got the other photograph underneath it with the long exposure. And I also took the horizon out as well. So there's been quite a bit of editing on that photograph, quite a bit of editing. Now, is it wrong? Is that wrong to do it that way? You can't capture that image unless you do it that way. You've got to take two photographs because the boat's moving. So I'd be interested to know what people's thoughts are on this, whether or not they think that it's digital art, it's photography, who knows. So if you've got an opinion on it, leave a comment below. Rant over. So, for those keen eyes, you'll notice that it's raining because it's a different day. If I'm being honest, I couldn't find anything that was going to work properly for the video when I was down here a few days ago. So it's raining today, which is brilliant because it means all the colours are now saturated. And I brought with me the secret weapon in woodland photography when it's wet, and that's Polariser. Because the Polariser basically is going to bring the saturation out in all these fantastic colours. I don't know if you can see it behind me, but it's absolutely beautiful. Totally different environment to what it was when it was dry the other day. So I've got an idea for a composition that I saw when I was down here the other day. I'm hoping that with this extra rain, I'm going to put a bit more water in the river. So we'll see what it's like, and I'll flick you on when I get down there. So you can see it's pretty wet. D5600 isn't weather sealed either, so a bit nervous about that, but what can you do? It's a cracking place to be when it's like this. You just got to take a chance. Anyway, the camera, I've put it into manual mode now because with the Polariser, when I put that on, it's effectively giving me a stop of light, which is making it a 2.5-3 second exposure, which on this I don't really want. I want about half a second to a second at most to try and keep a bit of movement in the water. So I put it into manual mode. I've had to increase my ISO in order to get that shutter speed to come down a little bit. So ISO 400, half a second exposure, and f9 I'm shooting in as well. So I'll just quickly flick you around, you can have a little look at the composition. So I'm looking up the river there, you can see you've got that nice golden tree overhanging. You can see the camera there. I'll just quickly show you the settings if I can. So it's that's the shot that I've just taken. I quite like it. It's got a leading line off the river all the way up to that little bridge there. So we'll see what it looks like in post, and I'll put it up now for you. So I've come back to the place I was here the other day, a week ago, whenever it was, and to shoot the same picture in these conditions, because I've got the polarizer now, and the polarizer works well when it's wet. It takes the glare off the light, off the leaves, and it also brings out the saturation in the colour. So what I'm going to try and do is show you the difference between the image that I took a week or so ago and the image now when you've got a polarizer on and it's wet. So effectively you can see the composition's the same. I've got this lovely fallen tree in the middle with these nice sort of, I don't know if the beech trees behind that have turned. So anyway, I mean f9, it's 1.5 seconds because the polarizer is acting as almost like an ND filter. So it's 1.5 seconds. It's not a breath of air though, so it's actually quite nice. So I'm going to take this now, and then I'll put this one up, and I'll also put the other one up so you can compare and you can tell me which one you like the best. So I'm absolutely drenched, but brilliant. It's brilliant in here when it's like this. So I've come a little bit further into the wood, and I've come across this footpath that basically sweeps through the scene. And I'll just flick you around, you can have a look. So you can see basically the footpath sweeps through as a nice leading line, and I've got these lovely autumnal, I think the beech trees, these beech on the right hand side, which just balances off the image, I think. So I've stuck this into aperture priority mode. I'll show you the composition if you can see it there. That's the composition there. And basically I'm shooting this in f13. Now it's ISO 200 because it is a little bit dark in here today. Got it in f13 so I get a decent depth of field into the distance, but not too much. I'm going to play with this. I'm going to take one at f5 or something like that, 5.4 or whatever it is, to try and blur the background a little bit as it disappears. It might give an impression of depth. Dead still, so it's 1.6 second shutter on this because I've got it at ISO 200. I don't want the image to be too noisy, so I've tried purposefully to keep the ISO down low and basically compensate for that with a longer shutter speed because there's no wind. So I'm going to take this shot now, and then I'll put it up and you can have a look. Well, there you go. 2 different days, 2 different sets of conditions. I'm soaked to the bone, but it's been good fun. It's been good fun. I hope you like the pictures. If you like the video and the content, please don't forget, hit the like button or subscribe, hit the bell, and you get all my future content moving forward. And also, cheeky plug, don't forget www.andrewjsmithphotography.co.uk. I'll put a link in the description for that. I'd be interested to see what people think of the website. So that's it from me now. I'm going to go and dry off. So until next time, I'll see you around.